Welcome, everyone. So happy Thanksgiving to all our American friends out there. So before I start, I want to quickly introduce myself. My name is Michelle Loong, and I am the Director of People and Talent with Quincus, and I'll be your moderator this evening. So let me quickly start by introducing our three panel of expert speakers today. So we have with us Ananta Dewandhono, who is the founder and former president at Azukaego Logistic Indonesia and principal consultant at SC Logistics Consulting. Ananta has over 30 years of experience in the field of supply chain, business development, strategic planning, marketing, and has held senior management roles in local and multinational companies in Indonesia. Next, we have Layla Sharif. Layla is a regional recruiter and quality, health, safety, and environment manager at BTB International. Layla specializes in recruiting for the freight forwarding, transport, and logistic industries in dynamic markets. And last but not least, Azukaego Chukwuelue, who is the director of atTruss Ugavi. Azukaego is a supply chain specialist and gender inclusion advocate. She brings with her 20 years of experience and has helped organizations rethink their supply chain structures. So welcome all, and thank you very much. We're very excited to have you here with us today. So before we start, my colleague will actually share a poll on a question. If you can help answer the poll, and then towards the end of this session, we'll share the results. Okay, so let's dive straight in. So my first question to the panel is, we all know that there isn't that unicorn candidate, the 100% fit of candidate out there, right? So maybe I'll throw this question to Layla. You know, you're very specialized in recruitment, right? So what are some of the key traits or qualifications that you look for when you're recruiting for candidates in the supply chain industries? And what do you see are these traits that will lead to success in the supply chain roles?
Well, thank you, first of all, Michelle, for the great introduction and so detailed. When we're normally, or throughout my experience over all these years, are almost 10 plus in recruiting, primarily for, as you rightly mentioned, the freight forwarding and transportation industries. The most important, really the key traits that stand out in candidates, besides the experience part of it, I must say experience still does play a major role, is how that experience comes into play. So for example, we would normally as recruiters ask questions more geared towards situations in which they have shown persistence, situations in where the candidate has proven themselves to be a problem solver, how they've stood up on their feet right in the middle of an issue, or how they've gone out, especially for management roles when we consider them, especially how they've gone out of their way to demonstrate empathy in key situations. So really those are the three main characteristics we look for: persistence, how they're problem solver, and how they demonstrate empathy. Well, those are the main key themes, right? Then all of our questions really, as a recruiter, for me at least, are sort of geared towards seeing how they fit into those particular categories. And of course, soft skills are important, behavior competencies are important, but those come later. The more, important are these three key skills. Yeah.
So thank you for that. That's very interesting. And I do agree with you. I think a lot of the things that you mentioned, right, from persistency, problem solving, and empathy, I think it applies not just in the supply chain, industry, probably it applies, overall, I think, with companies and organizations these days. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so, Michelle. Sorry. Can I add something on that, Michelle?
Oh, yeah. Go for it. Go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you again inviting me to share the things today. Maybe I can add something on top of what Layla's mentioned, because of my background, basically with so many corporations, and of course for majority focus on supply chain. I'm more to the user rather than recruiter specific. So what I know, depending on the industries and the organizations, of course, the soft skill like Layla mentioned is also of course to be considered. But if you are recruiting a supply chain planner compared to the logistics guy, the were stressing on the background and the skill set probably a bit different. Why when you recruit a person for supply chain planning, I think you need the analytics type of persons, good in numbers, good in Excel probably, yeah. But if you're recruiting the logistics execution team, which is maybe transportation, warehousing, depending on the field, then you need somebody you can make things happen in terms of operationals. They can manage people stronger because they have the people on the field. So that kind of unique or specific background or skill set, maybe we have to consider as well, because the function bit different, yeah. And then of course, if you are in the manufacturing company, you need somebody doing all the SNOP things, backgrounds, experience, yeah. If you are in the retails, of course they will do more to the planogram thing on the shops, retail pickings in the warehouses, but different backgrounds. Of course, we need also to explore more on top of academics, maybe certification, like you mentioned before.
Okay, thank you for that. That's very interesting, I think, and it makes sense also, I think, what you said, right? Yeah, so I think the role that we're recruiting plays a role. Would you like to add to that, Azukaego?
So my network was acting up, and I didn't get the last point. If you could just repeat the question, please.
Yeah, no, I was just, Layla and Ananta was sharing with the rest of us, what we look for, these days when the key traits or qualifications we look for when we're hiring talents in the supply chain industry. So I wanted, to hear your perspective, when you're looking for talents in the supply chain industry.
Oh, interesting. So I'm sure this would have been mentioned, but particularly in this part of the world, a couple of things. First and foremost, the soft skills are important. So ability to solve problems, right? Ability to look at things end to end, ability to pay attention to the detail, ability to work collaboratively, right? Those are critical because even if the hard skills are there, supply chain management or any area of the supply chain has to do with working with people to get things done. And so those soft skills are critical. Now, beyond the soft skills, a big opportunity remains the ability to use data, to understand data, and then from that technology, ability to adapt technology, we have a lot of young graduates out of school today in Africa who come out of school and are not able to, read the data, and so they're encouraged to be able to use Excel as a basic tool for supply chain management. And then beyond that, to be able to use other analytical tools for planning, for instance, or for procurement, for instance. So those are the kind of things I look for. People who have the soft skills and are able to, be trained on data usage, on understanding the numbers, and also are able to adapt to technology. So those are things we look for currently.
Okay, I think that's very interesting because because my next question is actually what I wanted to throw out to you guys is, are there any scenarios where it would be better to prioritize soft skills over hard skills in a candidate, or vice versa? Maybe I'll throw this to Ananta.
Yeah, hard skills, soft skills, probably, yes, of course, by function or by industry, but I think it's more into the layers, the layers of the organizations. If you're talking about what Layla and also Azukaego mentions about collaboration plus also leadership plus also a skill of supervisions, the more they go into the higher level of organization, of course, we need that part of the skills, basically, yeah. But in terms of the hard skills, it's more to the function rather than the layer of organizations, yeah. Function meaning, if you're talking about logistics, put aside supply chain planning, of course, what Layla mentioned, numbers, Excels, scenarios, and optimization. That's the planning. But if you're talking about logistics, you do the warehousing. Of course, you have to know how to design the warehouse, racking, picking, activities like even you have to know how to drive a forklift driver, right? So that kind of hard skill probably needed if you want to recruit specific person. So depend on the functions, more only on the hard skills. The soft skill will be more to the layers of organization. That's what I can think of.
No, I think I do agree with you on that. I think there are certain functions whereby sometimes the hard skill is a must-have.
Yes.
You know, because if you
Yes,
don't have
course,
it, it's just going to be, in some functions, I would say literally impossible to perform your role, right? You know, so yeah, completely, you know, agree on that.
Just like Azukaego mentioned, if you do the supply chain planning function, but you cannot operate Excel, so-called, yeah, you cannot read numbers, then you are not it's not the place for you then. Just a hard part of the skill thing. Yeah.
But do you think, I mean, I'm just thinking of you right now. I mean, Excel or number skill, can it be trained, you think? If you've got the right candidate with the right attitude, that's open-minded, that's collaborative, that's willing to learn.
Yeah, some training maybe can, we call it, add values into the skills, yeah, at a certain level. But if they just don't like the numbers, very difficult then. Maybe I don't know. Yeah, maybe can add on it.
Yeah, let me jump in here again. I'm looking at you know, the experiences. You see that there's a whole lot of difference between the developing and the developed markets. Here, for instance, take Nigeria as an example. It's in the last 5 years, 5+ years, that we have more than one university offering any course in the supply chain. And I think it's basically transport and logistics today. You know, so what we have a lot of is people who have gone through school, through the sciences, through the arts, engineers, now finding themselves in the supply chain function, in one of the supply chain functions. So what we see is a situation where we really have to train, you know? So one of the things we look for is the willingness to learn. How trainable are you? The ability to solve problems, you know? Once we see those kind of soft skills, then training is possible. And like I said to a lot of people, youths and young graduates, I say, see, there are jobs in the supply chain space. You have to come in and try to build the skills that you need in the space. And there's some things that you cannot do without. One is the willingness to learn. And that's the point Ananta is making. If the person does not have the willingness to learn the numbers, there's nothing you can do. The ability to solve problems, you know, a person in the supply chain space has to have the depth, you know, to get to the end of the problem. And if that depth is not there, there's nothing we can do. In the age we find ourselves today, it's different from the 10, 20 years ago. Now, people have a lot of choices. Social media is a quick way of earning or, you know, doing a whole lot of other businesses or getting into a lot of other fields. So it has to take young people, graduates, who are willing to go into the depth of issues, who are willing to continue developing themselves in an area where they did not have any experience, to be able to make the right kind of supply chain professionals. So training is possible, but the attitude has to be right.
Okay. So what I'm hearing from the both of you is really it is the attitude, right? The willingness to learn, you know, that growth mindset, you know, etc. That's most critical.
Yes.
Okay. So maybe I'll move on to my next question right now. So according to a Gartner survey, it was found that there's a lack of defined career path, you know, in the supply chain industry, you know, so that what happens, that becomes the key cause of attrition in certain supply chain positions. How can us as companies promote, you know, upward or lateral mobility within the supply chain organization to prevent this from happening? Maybe I'll throw this to Layla.
I think I can only use my company as an example. So we are a freight forwarding company, and I think where we are strong is our succession planning. So one of the things that is really important is, also touching back on the question that was asked before this and the great answers that came through is the learning agility, right? So the ability to be able to take information, to learn it, to put it in a way where you know that it's not going to only help you now, but it's going to be helping you later. And how you can only do that, I mean, as a candidate, as an employee at any particular level, is really, spread yourself, go out there, learn more, but also learn from the experience that is already present in your organization. I think that a lot of the times where people really internally suffer or really struggle or take a step back is when they don't have or cultivate the right relationships at the right level of the organizations they currently work in, because that sort of creates a little bit of a stopgap for them. They're not able to grasp or learn quick enough, and I think it takes us back to your previous point, to learn quick enough to get to the next level. I mean, we have this Generation Z, millennials, all this entering the workforce, right? So we've got the millennials, and I think that I am one, and I think we have a lot more willingness to prove ourselves, to go out there and get whatever we can to make the best out of it as is. And then use that to be able to, work our way up in terms of any organization where we're employed. When it comes to the newer people who are graduating from college, who are looking out for jobs, again, it is the learning mindset that sets any candidate apart from the other. So, things that are geared towards how they're able to tell a recruiter or how they're able to explore the concepts of where they've proven themselves, even in academia, right, while they were a student, and how they've grown. So I think that, it does still bounce back to the learning agility part of the question. Yeah.
Okay, I think you gave a lot of very good tips, for us out there, right? So learning's important. And a lot of the time, I think in career, it's also in our own hands, right? You mentioned about building relationship. But what about, I mean, if you can share some of the things, I mean, you mentioned succession planning, right? If you can share a little more details, I mean, so I'm trying to look at it also from a company's perspective. What can we do as a company to help these people, these talents, to move them to, upwards? Are there anyone can share on this?
Maybe I can share on that if you're okay, Layla. Okay. Michelle, before I built my own consulting company, it's about more than 5 years ago. I've been working with so many multinational and big local companies in different industries. The thing that I experience is like this, because not just about the attrition of the career path of the candidates or the staff, but also how to keep them stay in the company, right?
Yes.
First thing first, I think the visibility of the organization chart and the structures. Visibility. If you grow, change the organizations, make it visible to the candidate or your staff. Yeah. So they know where they are now and then where they want to go upward later on. If you're talking about upward or lateral, from my experience, if I was lucky to work with a company that have so many factories. If you have, we have so big countries in Indonesia, 7,000 islands, 5 big islands from end to the end is, 6 hours flight from the east end and the west end. So we have so many area where the factories, we have 15 factories or more, so we can relocate them in factories if you want to go lateral. If you are talking about in the retail business, we have so many distribution centers in the country, so you can move them around. Yeah? But in the other side as well, is it a lateral, make them happy, so they can get a new exposure, experience in different area, so we can keep them there. But also, what I mentioned is about the visibility of career going up. I have an experience to have a kind like e-learning type of things. If you want to go up, there have to be a learning path. You have to have a pass on that learning, and then go up again. You have to have certification, so-called internal certification of that learning, depending on the function. So that's also another path they can go through, so they know where they are now. Plus, of course, assignment of the projects, initiative, involvement with the customers, certain projects, cross-functionals, that kind of what do you call it, initiative from the company that maybe it works for me. I don't know from the other company, but to make them staying in the company longer and then keep giving value adds into the companies through, of course, the supply chain functions. That's what I can add, Michelle.
Okay, I mean, that's good sharing. So what I heard is you talked about obviously job rotation, right? Keeping them, moving them to different places, different factories, keeping them motivated, obviously coming out with the e-learning platform, is really to grow them and keep the excitement and motivation. So that's good. What about Azukaego? Anything to add on this? I think you're muted.
Connections.
Yeah, just to share an example.
Yeah.
Just to share a particular experience. Okay. So exactly what Ananta and Layla did that. Remember that you're a demand planner today, but overall you're a supply chain professional. And I've worked in organizations, Mondelez, Kimberly-Clark, that have the internal learning platforms. There was a Mondelez University, there was a QHSE University, there was even an Accenture University, at one point in time. So the e-learning culture was there, the courses were there, the certification was there. But you see, the attitude is, I'm a procurement professional. I'm a procurement manager, I'm a demand planner. So to Ananta's point, it has to be both ways. The individual must understand the importance of getting the end-to-end experience, because you add value most when you understand the chain end-to-end. The company needs to, beyond providing the platforms, beyond asking that people take this opportunity, must also stipulate a certain number of years to be a certain manager, for instance. Even if the person has been there for 10 years, we'll leave the person there because there's no succession. Depending on the size of the company or the region. But that's not good for the organization, because one, you run a risk. If we see a lot of organizations today looking for procurement managers, procurement directors in the region here, because a lot of people are relocating, and that succession planning has not been built over time, because you have someone here and someone here, and the person here has never moved to any other place, and nobody has moved in that space. So I think that organization in the relevant platforms for learning function 5 years in one role, gain another experience. It's controversial, but that's my view.
Okay. I think the connection is not so good, though. I don't know whether it's on my part or it's just breaking up.
Disconnected from me as well.
It was a bit shaky, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
that's fine. Azukaego, you're still with us?
Don't think so. Yeah.
Yes, it's probably the connection on her part, I think.
Yes.
Okay, that's fine. No, I mean, that's good sharing. I mean, I think all of you raised very good points, right? Which brings me to my next question. So we can put all this in place. I mean, like a company, like you say, whether it's from, an e-learning culture, a learning culture, a job rotation, giving employees visibility of their career path, etc. So I think it's great if companies have that in place. But what else can, a supply chain organization do, to build a great culture? Because for me, culture is also very, very important. You can have all this great stuff or initiative in place, but if you don't have a great culture, a lot of the time you will still end up losing talents or losing people, right? So what can we do as a company to create this great culture? Who wants to take this question?
I think I'll go first on that one. And I think that, culture is a key ingredient for success. As a recruiter, I could not tell you how many times, even when we had slow recruiting during the pandemic, I basically had to go out and sell our company based on the culture we have. It is an important element. It is the most important ingredient. There can be nothing more important than culture. Culture eats strategy for breakfast, or is it the other way around? So I think that the way you maintain your culture again is your people are the evidence of your culture, and they demonstrate it day in, day out. The way your people behave, your employees behave with customers, with colleagues, internally, externally, anywhere, is every single employee is setting an example for your culture. It's something we can't control. It is something that is out of reach or out of control for us. But what we can do is constantly monitor it and try to set it apart from others. And the key ingredients, I think, when you try to set apart your culture as an organization culture from others, for example, ours is a service culture, right? So everything really evolves around service, including the behavior competencies we look in when we're hiring for our company. So it all revolves around the greater service and quality of the service we provide. And the candidates, and I speak as a recruiter perspective again, because I am one, the candidates that have to be hired, have to demonstrate certain aspects in their personality or their behavior or how they've dealt with situations that correlate with our culture. And that's how candidates really are selected here. So it's the biggest part, and it is probably the most important part. Yeah.
No, I completely agree with you on that. It is the biggest part, it's the most important part, but it's also the hardest part, though. Because building a culture, you're dealing with people, right?
Yeah.
I don't know, Ananta, you want to add to that? Maybe share your experience?
Yes, maybe already mentioned before, a kind of a culture like learning cultures, collaborative cultures, or what call it, keep doing improvements culture, continuous improvement culture. That's a very generic, but if you go into specific industries, maybe the culture in supply chain a bit unique or a bit specific. When I was in retail company, so-called, we have so many shops. We have to deliver from so many distribution centers. We have thousands of SKUs, hundreds, thousands of KUs. So the culture, aside from the learning, aside from the make it happen type of culture, the culture have to be what we call it perfect delivery, perfect picking, and also deliver exactly at the store, exact times, So that kind of also additional type of the culture have to develop. If you are, of course, agree with Layla. I was also in working with a 3PL company. The service culture has to be there. But when I was working for the manufacturing company, a bit different. On top of the culture that mentioned by Layla, we create a culture with like this, creating competitive advantage through supply chain cultures. So anything that you do in supply chain initiative, make sure that your product is delivered in full, on time, and low cost, and of course competitive in terms of overall look of the product. That involving also safety and health, environment things. So creating values, competitive advantage is another culture you have. Then to build that one, of course, there is some role modeling you need. Get them involved into projects that related into that cultures. Give them incentive. Give them recognition if they achieve something related to that culture that you develop. Give them incentive for doing outing, happy hours on the break. So that kind of recognition probably will fuel the people to do more into the cultures and develop and flourish the culture that you want to develop. I think that's my points additional on that one.
Thank you, Ananta. Sounds like it's a lot of work to be done in building a good culture, right?
But you have to make it fun, though.
We have to, sorry, I beg your pardon, make it fun.
Fun.
Yeah, correct. I agree.
If you don't do it in a fun way, the culture will not be there. It's not flourish.
Exactly.
If you do it with so serious, then
Exactly.
the culture will not be there.
How do we ensure that, because we all know we want to build a fun culture, right? We want to build a very engaged workforce. You mentioned happy hours, team building, we want all that. But how do we ensure that everyone in the organization is really practicing it, that truly is buy-in. Because I always feel it's very easy to talk about it. And when you talk about it, everybody nods their head and say, yep, completely agree with you. This is what we need,
Yep.
But in reality, a lot of the time, that is not the case, though.
I agree. I agree. And I think that a lot of organizations don't have the culture should be fun, as Ananta said, it should be something that's fun to put together. But I think where people, or really where organizations sometimes lack is the ability to implement transparency internally, right? So I should be comfortable enough to go to my VP of HR and say, this upsets me, that upsets me, right? I'm not happy with this. And she should be forthcoming enough to give me a solution, right? And I think this is something that is honestly very prevalent in American organizations like mine. We're an American company originally. However, that culture is carried around into the Middle East or the APAC entities or the EMEA entities. It's because one of our values, again, is transparency in the way we do business, but also transparency and compliance in the way we do business, but transparency internally to each other. So, and an operations executive should be able to go up to his manager and say, I'm not happy with this, or this. And the manager should come back with a solution. And I think we are lucky in our organization that sometimes when employees do go up to managers drop everything just to listen to this person and really take action seriously. And I think, that really empowers the culture, that element of transparency, because it's much needed. It is much needed, regardless of what level it is at the organization. Once a transparency element is injected into different parts of it, it just becomes a lot easier, to open that into becoming a greater cultural space than it is.
No, I can't agree with you more. I mean, it's good that from what you're saying, your company seems to have a good culture. Like
Yes.
you said, it's an American company. People are, transparent, open, and direct, etc. But I always feel like, people in an organization or even as a manager, right? You need to provide that safe, psychological space, right? When somebody comes to you to ask for something or, or able to raise an idea that's different from yours, because I think a lot of the time I still see a lot of people has that fear, they don't actually have the courage to do so, I see that a lot in Asian culture. I'm speaking from my own experience being Asian myself, I always believe it's also, the way we were brought up, right? And again, this is purely my own personal experience. I think we were brought up, because it's very, very obvious for me, because, I've worked in big multinational companies before, and I can see it most of the time happening to Asians, because we're brought up in a culture whereby, that's that respect, never speak back to your parents, right? Okay, so we have that culture. You see, Ananta is laughing, right? We would bring the same culture to school, respect our teacher, don't speak up, just listen to your teacher, do as you're told. And unfortunately, we bring the same culture to the workplace. So our boss, he or she is king, shut up, just do the work and, put your head down.
Michelle, lately, if this digital era, the last 5-10 years, probably it already changed, no? Because now you're talking about the if you need new recruits people, because I work also with some clients working on filling up the positions. New recruits, the youngsters now may not be the same like our age, right?
Correct. I agree. I totally agree with you. Our age. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. Yeah. No. I think the younger generation is completely different.
Yeah.
They are much more vocal, right? They have the courage, they voice out, they know what they want and tell you straight, I mean, these days, it's already, they're all looking for, if your company is not practicing hybrid work arrangements, it's already out for them. If you expect them to come into the office like 5 times a week. So yeah, agree.
Just on top of it, Michelle, one thing that I experienced is that to entertain that one, the youngsters, the younger generations in the organization, even though it's a multinational big organizations, they want to be to recognize or different recognition they want. We develop kind of opportunities to share the knowledge. They speak to other people. They becoming a trainer, becoming a source of knowledge for the rest of the people. That's quite fun, though. It's not monetary thing. It's just about recognition that they can do something to the others. sharing the knowledge. That's also another word, culture, so-called. Yeah, you can implement in companies for the youngsters.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Azukaego, you add? Yeah.
Yeah, I think just to also add to that, I was amused when you were talking about the culture in here, because it's the same thing right here. It will be tough to speak up to a boss in the you know, there are 5 populations in the workforce today, right? So it will be tough to speak to your boss, you know, and have a face-to-face conversation on a hard issue and look him in the eye. For the baby boomers and you know and above. But what's interesting, added to the fact that this generation are changing the narrative, is also the fact that organizations need to look inwards. Culture has become more important than ever because the Gen Zs and the Gen Xs are more interested in what they're passionate about, what your purpose as an organization is, what your culture is, as the first 3 considerations before they come and work for you, as opposed to the baby boomers and the borderline millennials who will shape themselves to fit into your culture. So it's this way now, you know, and it's dangerous for organizations if they don't put a lot of focus and emphasis on culture, because it's not automatic. Culture takes time. Culture takes focus, like you've all said. You know, I like when how Layla put it. You know, it's not something you pay lip service to. It's something you have to invest in. You know, so I think organizations need to be more aware because the tide has actually turned, and if you don't want to play catch up, you have to keep a focus on culture now.
No, completely agree. I think on the topic of culture, we can go on and on talking about it because I think this is not an easy one to address. If you ask me, culture. Like I said, it really takes a long time to build a great culture. Okay, so in the interest of time, so maybe let's jump into. I mean, thank you. First of all, thank you everyone for the great sharing session. Right, let's jump into some of the questions that has been asked. So the first question is from a fellow friend of ours from Danang in Indonesia. He or she wanted to ask about how important FIFO in supply chain and how to maintain it.
This is very
Ananta, you want
technical
to
though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Depending on the industry, I think if I can mention first in, first out, you're talking about it's about the general product, general FM using consumer goods. You know, the first thing that they produce, of course, they have to deliver first out, first in, first out. But FIFO is usually first expired, first out, usually used in the area of pharmaceutical, or the product that have the expiry date. So again, it's all important depending on industries. That's it. That's I can say. Hopefully it answers the questions, Michelle.
Okay.
Yeah, and added to that, also the industry critical, the type of products also, you know. I mean, what if you've come out of a FMCG food and moved to FMCG paper or diaper, for instance, food shelf life is between 6 and 18 months, and then paper and diaper is between it could be as high as 3 years. You know, it's significant shock, because then then the things you can't get away you can get away with in paper, you know, you can't get away with in food. So industry specific, product specific as well. Yeah.
How to maintain it? Use systems. As much as possible, use systems.
You can't run away from that, right?
Or if we use the very basic system, which is stock card, if you need it, yeah. Very manual system is okay, but start with something. Yeah.
Okay,
yes,
thank you for that. Yeah. So our next question. So I'll just read this out, yeah?
Yep.
Thank you for this wonderful session and great opening topic. I have 8 years of experience in logistics and procurement, working in Pakistan, and the degree in supply chain and AASCB accredited university. Could you kindly advise how to go global for employment? Maybe I told this to Layla first. So this is
because Layla is
an advice. Yes.
a global company. So how do you find a candidate who want to go global career, Layla?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, first of all, to start, it depends on what you mean by a global career. Like, what is it that you really want to do? Is it logistics and procurement? Then you need to sort of sharpen up your CV and write down the main keywords that recruiters would pick, and here it also, again, has to be a little bit more specific. So what sort of experience do you have? Are you a supply planner, demand planner, be as specific as you can, or have you been both? So work your way up and try to reflect to your employer where you want to go as well, and what you can add as value to them. So that's all the tips I can give.
Yeah, I think he's probably looking at, I mean, as it's mentioned in the question that he's currently working in Pakistan, is there a way he can work outside of Pakistan and, other countries?
Join a multinational company. That's for start.
Join a multinational company. So more opportunity there in terms of job.
To have offices around the world. That's one thing. On top of putting your CV and LinkedIn first. Join the multinational companies, and then from my experience, join the communities, professional communities. Asosiasi Logistik Indonesia, that association that I co-founded in 2003, is basically a professional association where we provide the platform, the activities, the communities where people can interact with each other. Of course, in supply chain logistic professionals come together and learn and networking. From that association, we have workshop, we have gathering, we have seminar, we have even yearly exhibitions. So if you go into the associations and meet the people there is a possibility you go develop career through your friends in the communities or the association. That's another thing for me.
Yeah, I agree. Azukaego, anything to add to that?
Yeah, added to that, I think you should also be open to volunteering, so that you gain more experience. The whole what do you call it? The whole gigs thing, taking your time and while you're on a role, trying to get more experience in other roles, trying to understand how your role works in other markets and things like that. Be interested and have the conversations, network across your organization, but across markets or beyond that. It's important to be visible and to have the conversations, because that's how learning also occurs.
Agree. I think building the connection and network. I mean, Ananta, you're right. I mean, if you join a multinational company as a first step, I mean, that definitely helps, right? Because you have that avenue there, the different offices there, right? But I think, you need to take, your own career in your own hands. So really talking to the right people, building the network, getting to know. I mean, if your company has offices, let's say, anywhere in the world, get to know the people there, but also really, showing your own, your own self-worth, your credibility. People know, you're in Pakistan, but you're doing a great job, make it well known that the next step for your career path, you want to relocate to somewhere else. I think that really helps. I think you need to speak up, also be vocal with what you're looking for, because for me, I always believe in that, because what's the worst thing that can happen, right? You don't lose anything. The worst thing that can happen is maybe your manager says, no, it's not going to happen right now. That's the worst thing that can happen. It's not the end of the world. I always think, but that will be my, 2 cents worth, my advice. Just hopefully I've answered this question.
Mitchell, one more thing is also the issue about mentors and sponsors, having people, you can relate to and have those conversations with as well. Added, to the point about visibility, because the mentors and sponsors know what the opportunities are open are and can actually look across the markets. And I mean, you have to have conversations, to your point.
Absolutely. So let me ask you a question, Azukaego. I mean, maybe it's just me. So what's the difference between a mentor and a sponsor?
That's an interesting one because I've also gone to look for the answer. There was this very interesting TED talk. Can't remember her name now. And she said, and I totally agree. So a mentor is someone who guides you in terms of this is what you should do. This is what this is the way to go. This is the standard, and directs you and all of that. But a sponsor is one who might not necessarily guide you on a daily basis, but speaks for you when you're not in the room. Who opens doors for you way above your expectation, and you might not connect with the person every day. So a sponsor is more long-term in terms of, okay, strategically, this is where you're going. Okay, I think there's this opportunity. I can speak for him, whether you're there or not. So for me, I've always seen mentorship as guiding me, career or personal, hand-holding and showing me, the steps. But a sponsor more or less opens doors for you, or puts in a good word for you, or basically sponsors you, so has, puts his name behind you and all of that. And that's why credibility is also very important, and showing what you're able to do.
Yeah, I know, I totally agree with that. I mean, then we all need a sponsor then, for sure. Absolutely, right? And what about a coach then? You always hear people have coaches, right? Mentors and coaches. So what's the difference then?
So, I mean, I would argue that a coach and a mentor can be interchanged sometimes, but a coach will be more like from an academic point of view. So a coach will be the person who shows me how I do the work. Maybe a line manager, for instance, maybe a trainer, for instance, while a mentor will be somebody who might show, so a mentor might be my skip level manager, who might not show me how I do the work daily, but might come and say, you know what, I think that you might benefit from looking at it this way or looking at it that way, and directionally building in this way. While a sponsor might have been watching me all the while, sees one or two of my performance reviews and decides to give me an opportunity somewhere else where he thinks I can fit in. That's my view.
Okay. I mean, I'm just keeping track of time. I know we're a little, about 4 or 5 minutes over time. Is there any last advice or wise words from each of you before we close off today's session? Layla?
No, I think that the session was great. I think we should continue this initiative. And it's always great to pitch in to speak about recruitment, about, the sort of career path development that supply chain has to offer. As we already started this conversation by saying that it's not something that is very regulated. Sometimes people come into this industry just as an accident, right? They don't really necessarily plan for a career in supply chain or in freight forwarding or in transportation. And once they do, I think it is meant for them, because it is a challenging field and it keeps you on your toes. It keeps you challenged. It keeps you motivated. Depending on your personality, it could be a great place to be in the supply chain industry. But this was great. Thank you so much for having me as a speaker today, Michelle.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, it's been a pleasure having all three of you. I mean, I hope we can still continue this conversation, and for the people that dialed in today, if you guys want to connect with the speakers, you can connect with them via LinkedIn, if that's okay.
Already some.
Yeah.
Already I received some connection.
Yeah. Okay. And even myself, if you want to stay connected, we'll be here to help with any questions or advice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Thank you, Layla.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Bye.
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 Nice to meet you, Layla. Nice to meet you, Ananta.
Nice to meet you as well.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yes, bye.